in India. This weekend, we're delighted to be celebrating the opening of our new exhibition, Rhyme Unbroken, an exhibition on Krishna Reddy, an artist, educator, and lifelong learner, and a master printmaker who co-pioneered the viscosity or simultaneous color printing technique, changing the landscape of printmaking. Taking off from there, we're delighted to have with us today Bangalore-based artist Archana Hande, Ayisha Abraham, Jayasimha Chandrashekar, Ravi Kashi, and Venugopal VG. They discuss the context of learning, experimentation, and collaboration that shape the practices of printmaking in the contemporary moment and the Indian context. Through the panel, we hope to explore themes such as knowledge and resource sharing, systems of apprenticeship, and the role of peer networks, ateliers, or community in shaping and expanding individual artistic practices, as well as furthering or reviving the medium itself. Thank you so much, Archana, Ayisha, Jayasimha, and Venugopal, for coming on board as discussants on this panel. And a big thank you to Ravi for agreeing to moderate this. We're very excited to have you all here and share your insights, not only as practitioners yourself, but also as educators, facilitators of studio spaces, and more. And thank you to Shavoy for being our ISL interpreter today. Just a few house rules. Please this is a gentle reminder to turn off your phones and put them on silent mode. And now I'll hand it over to you, Ravi.
Yeah, Ayisha, please. Then we'll go to that. Just introduce. Yeah. Good evening, everyone. Putting it on paper, literally we have made some discussion and then pointers here and things like that, so that it's easier to talk around those points. And today evening discussion is in conjunction with Krishna Reddy's exhibition. As a student in Chitakala Parishad, this is way back in 86, 87. Krishna Reddy was there, and he conducted a camp in viscosity technique, which he was known for. All his works are known for. And about 20 printmakers from across India had come for that camp. And since we were students, we were cleaning up the plates, helping them, in all the other activities. But we got a fairly close, view of how he teaches, how we would go to each and every artist and then, help them in figuring out their, problem solving and things like that. And then he also showed some works. And later in 2008, when I was in New York for some other work, I visited his studio. And by the time he was already 83. But in an hour or so, he had so many questions about my work. And then he showed us his studio, he was not doing much work by the time already. But I took some pictures of the studio and all that. And from our panelists, Ayisha has worked with him, right? Yeah. So she would like to share some of her experiences with Krishna Reddy and the context around that. Then we'll move on to other topics that we are planned to discuss about. Ayisha.
Thank you, Ravi. I didn't exactly work with Krishna Reddy, but I did know him. I've sort of written down a few impressions, and I thought perhaps I could start with just reading them out. From about 1989 to 1995, I lived in New York City with a portfolio in hand from my Baroda days. I was introduced by Zarina Hashmi, a family friend, to Robert Blackburn's printmaking workshop. This workshop opened its arms to those who needed a home to create their art and their prints. Those who came from elsewhere, those who couldn't afford to rent other spaces for making prints, and there were many women artists, and as they would say in New York, people of color. It was a place for those who wished to meet other artists and work collaboratively with a very diverse group representing the world from across the northern hemisphere to the global south. The driving force behind this was, of course, Robert Blackburn, who had faced discrimination from working alongside the status quo artists of that era, most of whom were white and male. And this goes back, of course, to a segregated America in the 40s. A dedicated group of people worked hard to create a community for artists, shared spaces, and they believed in collectives and collaboration. And Krishna Reddy was one of those fellow travelers. And he was a pillar of this workshop and a great supporter of Robert Blackburn, along with a host of other artists and printmakers, including Zarina Hashmi herself. And they valued having a community of like-minded people, often on the margins of discussions and experiences around art, life, and its broader implications. This workshop, printmaking workshop, was not an exclusive club for just a few, guarded by gatekeepers with an abstract notion of quality limited to mainstream circulation. It was a space for anyone who wished to create art, learn new techniques, explore, and find camaraderie and partnership in the challenges that artists faced, whether it was technical, financial, or in gaining recognition. So many of them worked in Hayter's studio in Paris. And he was, of course, of a previous generation. And he was one such person in Paris, and he briefly worked, I think, during the war in New York. And he shaped the careers of many of India's acclaimed artists, including Krishna Reddy, Zarina Hashmi, and Nasreen Mohammadi. And he inspired them to blend technique exploration with the art trends of the time, especially in those days, in the 60s, minimalism. And this had a significant impact on artists, from different parts of the world and of women as well. And when the art world was very Eurocentric and quite male, and reflected the social mores of that era. I was personally always intrigued and attracted to Krishna Reddy's work. The hues of colors, and as you can see in the exhibition upstairs, the hues of colors that stained each print, creating a new visual and retinal experience, despite the repetition of themes, such as the series on the clown or Apu's crawling. Krishna Reddy seemed to have the confidence to take a single image, or like an anecdote, and draw out its potential. Equally intriguing were the plates that were left behind, worn out by continuous printing, lying as object sculptures beside the impressions that had been rolled off the press. And this was unique. The plate carried the history of every layer, etched in acid at different levels. The chemistry of using viscosity printing by working with rollers, water, and ink to access the different layers of these plates reflected a technique that required skill and intricate planning. It was also a sustainable practice by consuming less heavy metal and material. So Krishna Reddy was like an inventor who merged the science of this technique with the magic of alchemy, a confluence of colors, a range across the spectrum of color charts that danced off the page, creating not the heaviness of the metal plate with its gorges and its crevices and its dugout sort of parts of the plate, but a lightness that radiated luminosity. And the experience of seeing both was always awe-inspiring because the sculptural had always been thought of independently of the flat, two-dimensional surface of paper. And here the knowledge of one informed the other. Krishna Reddy was one of those generous human beings in the art world. He was a mentor, he was a teacher, an inventor, and a very good friend to many. And he created this unique legacy along with his fellow artists with a commitment to technique that promoted the exploration of options available to artists through shared studios and teaching. And it remains an inspiration for all in a way, and I think that's why we are here today, to celebrate his legacy, because I don't think it actually becomes old-fashioned or outdated, because just that, to have a shared space becomes like social sculpture, as it were, just for people to be able to gather and to converse and to talk about art and to also share technique and invent new ways of making art along the way. So I'll just stop here, and then we can open up the discussion.
We have to remember, it was a time when only a instructor, a teacher could actually teach you a technique. Today you can go on YouTube. We were discussing about the social media, how it has changed the way information flows and things like that. So the Krishna Reddy camp, which was a 10-day camp, I think, if I remember correctly, transformed the Indian printmaking in a very different way. Lots of printmakers started, working in color, and that heavy textures would come into their work. And so it really, for the next decade or so, it changed the direction. And another such camp, which happened much before, I just want to quickly contextualize the Indian printmaking in a sense. So in 1970s and 80s, there was this huge surge in printmaking. Like I joined Kent School of Art in '83, and almost everyone was doing an etching or a lithograph. So there was a lot of enthusiasm in that. And then in 1970, which was a watershed movement in Indian printmaking, there was a camp in Delhi, which was mentored by Paul Lindgren, a very important printmaker himself. And that workshop was sponsored by Smithsonian Institute. 100 artists came for 1 month, and they all learned etching. Before that, only very few people who went out, like Jyoti Bhatt and all that, they knew a little bit of etching, and then people had to learn directly from them. But this camp, which was for a month-long camp, even Ghulam Sheikh was part of that, and some of the etchings which he displayed in the last exhibition here. So it created a surge of interest in printmaking. And lithography was available because the film posters were being still printed. Urdu press was using lithography. So lithography was accessible. But etching was a very technical kind of medium. And this 100 artist camp in 1970, it started a new trend. And then in 1975 or 76, there was a major exhibition in Jahangir Art Gallery. And there is one book called This is Print. And it's almost like a Bible of that time, because we could see every name that stayed further, and they all started doing more and more printmaking. And then in Venugopal Art Gallery, people like Chandranath and Chandrashekar, who are senior generation printmakers from Karnataka, who went to Shantiniketan and came back by learning printmaking there. They organized an all India level printmaking exhibition. So that was another important milestone for the students like us who would go see that, and very wondering at the technique, the kind of imagery that came about, etc. And most of the studios, like in 1956, in Baroda University, the departmental system was set up. Like they said, this is sculpture department, printmaking department, painting department, artistry, like that. And that legacy has still now continued, which we'll come to further. And at that time, Lalit Kala Academy in the Gadi studios, they set up a printmaking studio. Then the other Lalit Kala centers in Lucknow, Chennai, so they also started a printmaking studio. So one had to depend on these community studios set up by the Lalit Kala and the government institution to continue the printmaking, or one had to be teaching in the printmaking department. So those were the two options. And then later the scenario changed, we'll talk about that. And then there were printmaking binales, like Bharat Bhavan Binale is one very important landmark. One could see prints from across the world coming there and being displayed. So this was the kind of atmosphere almost till 90s. And 90s something changed. And I also feel personally that 70s and 80s, there was this huge socialist kind of mindset when artists came together, and we had this huge event for 6 events called Kala Mela in Venkatappa Art Gallery in the above, in front of the Map Museum. And 150, 200, 300 artists would come together, and they did so many things together. So that I think that socialists are this mindset that we have to reach out larger audience was fulfilled by the printmaking medium, because one could have many editions and then many prints, etc. Somehow that changed in the 90s when the economy opened up. We started having the globalization, and then neoliberal economies came in, and there was this surge in sales of the artworks. The artwork price boomed, and at that time, somewhere, the printmaking became a second cousin. Then it was not seen with as much importance as one would either show or buy a painting or a sculpture. So somewhere along that line, what we call a demarcation started. The other interesting thing was printmaking was used extensively in small magazines in 70s, 80s, and 90s. Artists were doing lino cut, and then that lino cut was printed in letterpress, and then that would be inserted, or it would become part of the magazine. Like Jyoti Gulam Sheikh was doing it for Kshitij and Vrishchik magazine. Then we had another magazine called Kala Vikasa in Bangalore. Alan Narasimhan was editing that. There we could see prints in that method. Then I was editor for another magazine called Sanchaya. So we also would request artist friends to do lino cut, and then we would print that and then insert it or make it part of the book. So this was another direction which printmaking was reaching a much larger audience. So, and other than that, it also set in a generation of artists who identified themselves as printmakers. Later that identity marker changed. We will talk about that. And then there was this printmaking portfolios which were used for fundraising. And this would happen in Fine Arts Faculty, Baroda, during the art fair. Then it happened in Shantiniketan during the art fair in Shantiniketan. So students and artists together, they would print these portfolios of etching, lithograph, and lino cut or woodcut. And then those were sold in bunch of 10, 15, 20 prints together. And because there was already a well-known name in the portfolio, a student like mine would become part of that portfolio. So that was another very interesting phenomena which later kind of dwindled out. So given this kind of situation where for almost 2.5, 3 decades, printmaking was a very, very important and significant medium. Somehow later it started dwindling down. My question to my friends is, what is happening now? What is the status of printmaking, if one were to call it?
I think Archana should take this.
Hi. No, it's very interesting you spoke about portfolio. For that only, if I give an example for the future or what was past, even people who purchased the portfolios, it didn't purchase because it is a lower cost or it is a print. It's also the value of the artwork, which they also knew it is not meant to be in a framed sector. So a lot of collectors still, they will there are the older collectors, every month will take out the portfolio and enjoy by looking at it. So it was more of a visual which is very closer and precious. But today it is more like, okay, I'm reproduction, or it is a print. The meaning of print is like I was discussing with Ravi, it is more, has been looked as a quota or a minority sector. Yeah? And now in NGMA as we are having a woman printmaker show, so I feel it is the worst title ever. One is a minority of a woman and a printmaker both together, becomes like a SC quota or whatever, it's a kind of caste divide in the art field. But that's not true. Print still has a major value as a technique. Technique for me is a tool that every artist in the world uses in their work. It doesn't matter, you call it a painting or a sculpture or a print, but it is the technique which you are using. Even in Krishna Reddy's, poor Krishna Reddy, we only speak about viscosity, we never speak about his imagery in a way. So I think it's high time that printmaking is one of the very old technique. Even in the 50s, 60s in Shantiniketan, Shobnath really experimented with the whole printmaking technique and pushed it. And then we are now going back into where he has already pushed it. So the future would be, as we are having AI to all kinds of technical thing of printmaking in today's quote unquote, then why we have to really focus on the medium and not look beyond it in a way. So the 300, 400, whatever years, it's been before painting, I think the print was there. The first print is the thumb. And even in the caves, you will see the print impressions. But we never saw it like a print. So why today we have to have that kind of quota? So for me, it would be more interesting, even with Krishna Reddy, to look at the imagery. As a student, coming from Shantiniketan, he also graduated from Shantiniketan, never understood his work, always thought it was very abstract, because coming from a narrative background, using a technique in such an abstract way, but it is not abstract. It is still a narrative form. To understand that itself for me took so long. So that is much more interesting, that how he used the medium in his benefit for his image. And that would be an interesting dialogue in the future. And we always, like Ravi will know this more, because we have always fought for this, that why we have been only questioned about the technique. Even in the Bharat Bhavan biennial, which you mentioned, the first biennial I was there in Bharat Bhavan working, the scale of the image, the black and white, first time we are even looking beyond that. And it is something which is kind of exciting to see these woodcuts in the scale, or the etching in that, or Zarina Hashmi's, those images, first time we are able to interact and look, where she speaks about the partition in such a strong manner, and then you feel, yes, it has to be a woodcut. It cannot be any other medium. So that realization, I think we need to bring back for the future, than holding it back in a way.
Good evening. Thank you. So my first exposure to printmaking, maybe in my bachelor's, though I am trained in painting, then I was printmaking was one of the minor subject for me. So from that time, I developed this kind of fascination for printmaking, and so I did my master's in printmaking and continued to practice. The point you made earlier was the surge in printmaking activities in the 70s and 80s, though I was not in the, I joined art in 90s. So that time onwards, I've seen a bit of stagnant situation in printmaking, basically, up to maybe 2000, somewhat in mid-2000s. So it was not like very active. I've seen many, of course, Bharat Bhavan was there, but later it was almost defunct, and stopped doing this. And there are this, except this government studios like under Lalit Kala. But no, I'm talking about the biennales, print biennales. So
Last year it happened.
it was the just a biennale, not specifically print biennale. So then there was, I think, Printmakers Guild, which was functioning in Delhi under Kanchan Chandar and Nirmalendu Das and all. So after that, there was almost like a phase which is almost dead, you can say. Not much activity unless some individual practitioners in Baroda and Shantiniketan or Delhi, but not much in South, I think. And one reason I find is a lot of the artists who trained in printmaking are from South, settled down in Baroda or Shantiniketan and continue to practice there. But later, 2000 onwards, I see kind of revival in whatever limited manner, individually artists doing it. They started acquiring presses and started printing their own in their own spaces. There are some community spaces. I wrote a recent paper on this, how particularly Bangalore printmaking has slightly changed for the positive in the last 10 years, 10 to 12 years. And a lot of these community studios are coming up. And a lot of collaborations happening. Of course, the portfolios and the exchanges were mostly popular in Baroda earlier. Slowly, it's some other institutions are making it possible here also. I think it's a positive sign. I'm quite interested to know how it goes forward. And Archana was mentioning about the large-scale printing. There was an exhibition happened in 21 in CKP. I think it's one of the landmark show. I should say that because many people wrote about it. It was quite a sensation in social media also because of the scale of the works. And I think these kind of events and shows will definitely make some kind of difference in the medium to reach out more people. Because I believe printmaking is one of the most democratic medium, and because of its reachability and possibilities in terms of edition making or whatsoever. So this kind of events and collaborations will definitely move forward, I think.
Just to give a little context, Archana, Jayasimha, Venu, and myself, we started as printmaking specialists in the sense we did our master degree in printmaking and then moved on to various other mediums. And one question at that time which was asked was, you are a printmaker, why you are painting? Even one of the critics wrote about my exhibition saying that he was a printmaker, now he is painting, prints don't sell, so he is trying to move on, and that kind of justification. But for us, moving away from that box of printmaking was very important. I was talking about boxes. The 56, when the department was set up, so this idea that you are a printmaker, sculptor, or a painter continues in the other ways. In Lalit Kala Academy, if you want to apply for the annual exhibition, there are these boxes. You have to tick in one of them. You can't be an in-between kind of practice. Lalit Kala, it is still there. Awards are still given for a printmaker, painter, and sculptor. So how is this urge or a desire to move away from that boxes? I would like to, because more and more the contemporary art practice, artists are doing works which cannot be so easily defined in conventional, brackets and definitions. So, yeah.
No, I mean, I think I started off as a painter and then,
okay.
So printmaking is an acquired taste to me. Yeah, I mean, I think as you all said, probably like, as the title very fittingly says, putting it on paper, I'm just going to take some liberty to twist that, what I'm going to propose. I think we need to look at this in context, putting it in context. What I mean by this is, like, for example, Ayisha, who's worked in Robert Blackburn Institute. Robert Blackburn started Blackburn Institute at 1947. And at 1947, we are at the cusp of still having independence. We're a small nation in that sense. There is Crown Point Press, which is already 100 years old. right? We are talking about, are we talking about the vehicle or are we talking about the medium? For me, like art is the vehicle, printmaking is a medium, sculpture is a medium for that, for the convenience of the conversation, or rather I don't have the right word at this moment. So if we look at these kind of things in context, it becomes very relevant for us to understand where the surges came in, why was the need for portfolio making, and why is the discourse is ever changing. Like in today's context, a portfolio exercise is actually a blind following by a lot of practitioners, because the rules have been set, like at 60s, in 70s, in Baroda, like, see, we also have to understand the politics of image circulation. And what I say is, like, as an independent print, it cannot float, because it's such a small, limited numbered edition, like 10 or 15, it cannot reach in a larger space. So it would make total sense for 10 printmakers to come together, bundle it, say it as a portfolio, and package it and put it out. In today's context, it's no longer relevant. Like in today, like for example, even before someone finishes, like I myself, a lot of times I do it, and it's very interesting. Back in the days, like even when I was studying, like I was not allowed into my professor's studio working space because I would steal some technique. Even senior artists wouldn't allow us to go and work with them. It's very interesting. But today, as I said, even I do a lot of times, like even before the image is done, we already post it on Instagram. Our process video is more important than the final product. And it's always fascinating for me, like printmaking being the oldest form of reproduction or mass communication, and social media or digital being the most newest form, they go so well hand in hand, they're going together. Anyway, so coming back to what I was trying to say, putting in context, is we are operating under a lot of hangover and pressure. Like very simple way to probably look at is, for example, how lithography survived in our country. We all know, I don't know, like if you all know, till the 98, Urdu never had a, a standard type in computer. People couldn't type Urdu in computer. Lithography survived in this country because there were still scribes. There were calligraphers who was writing Urdu. A lot of independent newspapers, they're still functioning. If you go to Hyderabad, Chatta Bazaar, there are at least thriving 20 to 35, like these small posters, like these small, it's also almost, it's very interesting. Like it's like, they operate like, it's a newspaper, they operate as a community. There are at least 20, 30 people. They have the luxury of having independent patrons, right? Each press has only 20 subscribers. And it's fascinating in today's time. There's a man who goes, picks up this heavy lithographic stone. You know, today, of course, today, a lot of things have been, at ease. For example, transferring a digital image into a traditional medium is very easy today. So they use all that technology, and then they start printing, and end of the day, they only make 20 limited magazines. Now, this is where my interest is, the politics of limitation of an image. When it comes to a discourse like art, like 10, 20 is so difficult, right? When it comes to, like for me, like I see it in two ways. I mean, from my whatever practice over a decade and a half, I've collaborated with a lot of artists and a lot of printmakers also. There are two ways, according to me, an artist approaches to this. I mean, you all have done this, you can tell me. One is, there is an image already there. And you're just going and putting that image into the plate. That's one way of working. The other way of working is sort of building your image with the plate. I mean, if you look at in today's exhibition context, Krishna Reddy, if you see, I don't know how many of us know, he's a trained sculptor who passionately sort of picked up printmaking and who always articulated his plates as sculptures rather than prints. Prints were actually byproducts. Viscosity as a technique was in vogue, hence people sort of framed him as this viscosity printmaker, but in reality his works are works, like any artist would explore with any other medium. So I think coming back to these tick boxes, it's still something to be figured out for a nascent country like us. 75 years is significantly a small history, especially when we put in the light of a technique or a medium. Yeah, that's what I wanted to say.
So among the many collaborative spaces, Jayasimha used to run Prati. Now it has taken a different avatar altogether. As an artist, I could go there. Architects would come there and they would collaborate with him and make prints, lithos and etching. And so that has really transformed Bangalore art scene in a certain way. And Ayisha had done some project. Would you like
maybe I'll just add a small thing here. Probably it's coming from a very pressing concern. I actually got into printmaking because there was no knowledge resources. Like there was no one. There was no one who actually could tell me how to operate a press or what is a press. How long do you go and read these books? Sometimes practical things doesn't come so easily by reading a book. You know, so I've always been thriving for a space to work, to go and work. I could never find it. 2008, when I was in my bachelor's, I was like, to hell with this. It's basically two pieces of rollers coming together, and if you perform it in that way, you can make an etching press. I started there, right? And it slowly, I started, so my interest, or my rather, I would like to call politics, changed from image making to the auxiliary system around printmaking. So I started looking at building spaces, designing machines. Like so far I've made around some 50 to 60 presses. So it's always the interest changes. And today more than ever, a lot of people are taking that liberty to go away from the clutch of image making and trying to frame their practices in different way. For example, I think the exercise of atelier Prati, it was a social sculpture, as Ayisha was telling. Thank you for such a nice, pleasant word. I would never, I don't know, like how, like it's a shop, it's a studio, it's an adda, we don't know. Right? And she said it's a social sculpture, which is a refreshing way to look at. For me, that's what printmaking gave me, so that I can get out of image making and play around these kind of notions. Sorry. Yeah.
I think Jayasimha's being quite modest, because I think he doesn't quite realize like what he did achieve in those few years. How many years was it that in creating the space that he did? And I'll just speak from my own personal experience that I had spent 25 years teaching at Shrishti, and when you teach, you often just don't find the space, or even if you're doing your own work, it's a kind of a very limited sort of immersion in your own practice. And when I was to do a one-person show after 18 years, I really needed to find a space to go to where I could sort of just find that creative self again, and also be supported, because you often feel underconfident about your own practice. And that was the kind of space it embodied, that sort of non-judgmental space that you could go into, and you could sort of learn to be a student again, and to ask questions, and to learn new techniques, and to brainstorm about how you would achieve something. So it just released a certain energy and a certain kind of creative process, because I went in with these images, and then it was a collective decision to sort of try to figure out how you're going to sort of realize it as prints. But more than that, I trekked across the city. I would party with them. I would just hang out, and I came to know their dog Spirit very well, and all of that. And it became like something I could look forward to every day, from getting out of being quite alone when you're doing your own, and you need to be alone when you're doing work. But it's just that I think that we need to value such social spaces, and I think people in history over the last century realized that as we put more value onto being an individual artist and individualism, and as our system creates us to be just, like searching as individuals rather than as collectives, as people within communities, that a space like a printmaking workshop really has that value to really make us feel healthy as individuals as well and as a community.
Actually, most of even ceramics, if you see, it has that community thing because you share a lot of equipments and stuff like that. So if you meet a ceramic artist or a printmaker, even so you will see there is a community feeling, in a way that you're not really working in an isolation like a painter. So there is a collaboration in a way where in a project we always say collaboration never works, but the space kind of community and it's like a community kitchen in a larger way, all these, so which becomes very practical to sustain and work like that. That's why even the guild, which you mentioned, but before that, the realist, which started by Nirmalendu. Guild was not Nirmalendu. So these spaces also be used for, at that time, to promote the printmaking element because it was not in the cream. It was not even considered as a medium to express. It was more like a mass production, which still I actually would agree, because even if you want to do a graphic novel or all those kind of things, this is the best medium you could, that's why portfolio and all. But now it doesn't work in a certain way where you're using. So I also remember when I started experimenting with the plate and printing and adding things like, even like, I would say, that tick mark of the box is like, your work is intaglio or relief or what is it? Because it has woodcut and block print and an emboss. So how do you really define? Then she's not a printmaker. So it's a kind of, or she's using a rubber stamp. Yeah, so it's not like a rubber stamp is not a print. So I would say even a reflection is a print. So how do you really? But that was possible because of this realistic group and guild. They fought till the 90s, 20s, even, so then now Prati comes. But it's not about like who did, like even in Bengal it was very strong, in Delhi it was very strong, South Chennai it was very strong. So I wouldn't really generalize in the regional sector of printmaking. But the whole thing from the independence time, you can see the fight, and now we are saying there is no need to tick mark that I'm a painter. But it also went against the painting lobby, right? The hierarchy of the high art and low art. That is where it comes to.
So I have two provocative questions. Is there something called pure printmaking? One, and then two, has the way the printmaking is taught in art schools changed, or has it remained same, and how do we reflect on that?
What was the first sentence?
Pure printmaking. Is there something called pure printmaking? Because we are like adulterating it, some of us, not all.
I'm a pure woman printmaker.
And the second question is the way we teach printmaking in art schools, not Srishti, because it is a very different format altogether. And it produces a certain kind of student and the work. So would you like to reflect on that, and what can be changed?
So I think I would like to probably start with the latter question and then go back to the former one, pure printmaking, with a small anecdote. Like when I was studying masters in CKP, there was one professor, let's not name people, so there was a standard cassette of a particular technique. So you go to that person and he says, okay, go get this, do this, do this, that. You know, it's over. And you cannot go back and ask newer questions. Like, why? Like, first you do this. If something goes wrong, no, you didn't do that. See, it's also very interesting. Prints especially, they've always been fascinating. Prints are special objects of fetish. Because if you go and look at a painterly image, a painting, you can feel, oh, this painter has gone like this, he has painted like this. It's more of an emotion. But in print, what happens is, it's more of, you can dissect it as a technique. And hence, it's locked in this realm of explaining it to become technique. The moment, there's a popular saying, no, 5 printmakers come together, they just talk techniques, right? I mean, come on, if 5 printmakers come together, they discuss shop, boss. If 5 theater people come together, they discuss other important things with theater. Of course, it's bound to happen. So coming back to how teaching is happening, for me, I'm a new fish. I've been teaching this is my 7th year at Srishti School of Art and Design. What's interesting at Srishti is I'm not teaching print making specializing students. Now, I'm dealing with students who have varied interests, or rather aspiring practitioners, we would like to call them. They have varied interests. Some comes with a design intention, like a product design intention. Some comes with a graphic design intention. Some comes with a literary intention, a creative education aspect. So each student, like if I'm doing a small technique like screen printing, which could be a very menial thing, historically it has a lot of importance, is approached in 30 different ways. And each student has their own question or their own inquiry, which is very complicated. Like, so I can no longer operate from this like, oh, go, take this plate, do this. It cannot become instructional. I have to reinvent myself every day because I'm getting 30 new questions. Someone will come and ask me, oh, what happens when you put it out in the drainage system? What about sustainability? Someone says, what happens if I inhale this? Someone else says, why screen printing when we have a digital printer? So these kind of questions are very interesting, one has to go through. And for me, it's been very refreshing for almost 7 years doing with that. So essentially what I'm trying to say is we no longer can have this mono or a single view of printmaking is this. And, just like how a lot of historical documents are organized in a linear fashion, printmaking cannot happen in that way. We need to constantly connect a lot of things. Like for example, as civilization, woodcut, 2nd century, if you look at it, we were interested in surfaces. So we were doing relief printing. Slowly, Renaissance kicked in, we were interested in science. We started digging in as civilization, etching came in. And slowly, we lost our interest in digging in and we started looking at how superficially things work. Lithography kicked in. So this is how I read it. And I would always like to sort of connect that and reinvent in the teaching. This is in my situation. And coming back to pure printmaking, I think there's just printmaking. There's no pure printmaking, non-pure, impure, mixed media, this, that. What happens is a lot of times, again, as I said, there are these 2 modes. There are many artists who would like to sit and think about their image, and they do an amazing job of it, and they don't want to work while thinking. A lot of artists like to think through their hands, so they do it. Now, a popular thing is, oh, if artist has touched the plate, artist has cut the plate, then it's pure printmaking. I don't know, like 6 years of Prati, like I have international collaborations. So many times my large editions, here is an interesting thing. Today, we are in such a sad state, I cannot call myself a master printer because there's no institution in the country which can stamp on me saying I'm a master printer. All the master printers in our country, they're all self-proclaimed actually. Like, oh, Krishna Reddy is a master printer, he's a legit master printer because he got that award from William Hayter's studio. There are no institutions in the country which can produce that kind of a tab to people. So just putting it out there in the conversation. In this pure printmaking scenario, I have a lot of projects where artists call me, they say, hey Jayasimha, this is the context, this is what I'm looking at, this is the image. They send me the image, I sit and prepare the plates, blocks, or whatever whatever they want to do. I do approve. I courier the proof. They look at the proof. They give me corrections. They write. I have so many couriers coming back and forth from artists. Like one instance, I was working with artist Neelima Sheikh, and this was in pandemic, right? And it was a very large edition. I had to sort of send it back and forth in the pandemic some 8 times because she was very particular about our color. Like, so a lot of things happen like that. So this pure printmaking is a myth, according to me. Yeah.
But isn't in painters also do the same, having technicians doing it?
Yeah, I mean.
So that is not pure. I think that is a technical thing. The pure is where I think Ravi is coming, is the rules which were made for the printmaking. Is like the border has to be like this. The sizes
have to be same.
Intensity. Every edition. I think because the painter and sculptors also use technical thing which you as a master printer come through. So that, yeah, I give you the certificate. Don't worry. No. So, but that rule is like even one kind, but that was rule made for books or publication. Like when you look at film posters and all earlier poster, I don't think so that mattered. The litho posters of the film and all these things didn't matter. When it became into the art and a market value was stamped into, and these rules were. So I don't think so now it should matter, but still purists are there.
I think, first of all, I'm not in favor of branding artists with certain categories, a printmaker or a sculptor or a painter. Artist is free to work with any medium, and I have done a lot of works which are combination of painting and prints, because I did my bachelor's in painting and then shifted to printmaking. So a lot of works which came after my master's were, a lot of my proof prints I painted on it and even exhibited. But for me, the beauty of print lies in the process also, because it's exciting. There's a kind of unpredictability in it, which you don't find in painting. But I don't limit myself to only printmaking. I do different kinds of practice. And the technical aspects also, for example, the idea of edition making, which is print stands for. If there are 10 prints, for example, the question is, the general perception is they're supposed to be identical. But what is the percentage of being identical? Whether it's 100% identical or there is a degree of small amount of difference, which bound to happen because it's hand pulled. It is not something like a digital print which will look exactly 100% similar. So these are, since it's hand pulled prints, I think this freedom of artists can take this freedom of having variations within the print, as long as it works for him or her.
Ayisha.
No, just in relation to that, I just think that chance element, which is very inherent to printmaking, is what makes it exciting, because it kind of releases the artist from that burden of, having to sort of consciously shape, that mark or that image that they're seeing in front of them. And I think, it's that magic that actually makes it quite special, because you have to step back and then you don't really know what it's going to look like. You don't know what the combination of the colors and I know with the prints that we made, everything mattered. How much ink we rolled, how much blue we put into the black, and these are only things that you can do, when you're actually faced with having to make that print. So I think there's something I think, going back to what I was saying is like, I just remember at the end of every day, I felt very alive, because everything was, you were learning and making, and you were in charge of what you're doing, and yet you had absolutely no control over anything. And I think that makes it kind of a very special process. which where technique matters. And yet that doesn't mean that you have to evacuate content and you don't think conceptually. And I do think looking at Krishna Reddy's work again from fresh eyes, because I knew his work when I was a lot younger, is that there was a conceptual, there was content, and there was, even though it seems like he's just using limited themes, but I think in that sort of stubbornness to actually limit it, he's actually drawing out a kind of a conceptual way of working as well.
Actually, Ayisha, as you're here, the purest what we are talking is also in the filmmaking and video. It's the same debate actually happened, is like in the video art, they are not films, they are not filmmaker. Well,
a lot of those anxieties come from really industrial processes, yes. Right? So it comes from, and I think artists have always been interlopers, right? They've sort of taken from techniques that have been invented by the industry, whether it's the big format cinema or it's printing, which was an essential kind of offshoot of industrialization. So artists then, and it was the same with photography. There was something called art photography. But once it's in the hands of artists, because they were always marginalized, they were always on the sort of on the outside of mainstream society, that really it was a freedom to explore and to invent. And in a way, I think that's what has to be kept alive, is that that it is a space for invention. It is a space for experimentation. It becomes a receptacle or a container for experimentation. And it doesn't matter what people say, because people may say, okay, this is not cinema, this is not art, this is not whatever. But it doesn't really matter, because so long as you are immersed in it, then that's what matters.
Now that you mentioned the industrial process, printmaking, I think, is a very strange mixture of artisanal practice, where you do things with hand, but then the rest of the thing is like all reproduction. So I think there's a lot of interesting things which come together there. Very quickly, I would like to talk about my printmaking process expansion, because I work with paper. Then in some of my works, these plaster of Paris slabs are cut like woodcut, but I on that I lay freshly made paper, and the impression comes out like etching or intaglio process. And then when I send it to this printmaking binales, they refuse to accept it as a pure printmaking, so that because it doesn't fit the boxes and things like that. Anyway, so that was just an aside.
I think this is happening in recent some of the biennales also. Yeah. So they mention we don't accept digital prints. Yeah. So only hand pulled. I mean, where the hands-on. So it's not digital. Yeah, exactly. But because of the 3D quality of it, it's more sculptural or something like that.
Like a relief work. Yeah. The one very interesting thing which I want Venu to talk about is that there is this new projects from the last couple of years, artists exchanging prints. Like as a buyer, I'm not going to buy the print, but between artists, they come together, and then there is this show where everybody has contributed, and then it goes to other printmakers, right? So that is the. So can you just talk about that very interesting project?
Yeah. So of course, it's not a new idea. Print exchange is happening from so many years. I think maybe Baroda and Shantiniketan started during Nandan Mela and all those things. So where this goes to different. I mean, buyers will. What I heard is buyers will pre-book all these portfolios because there are some artists who are well known. So, but some of the projects I was part of some are actually for charity, basically. So they'll ask for a certain number of editions, and few editions from the set will go for fundraising for. Recently there was one which I was part of. There's no commercial involved in this, basically, unless the organizers will sell it to some people to just raise funds. So the artists will not get benefited through commercially benefit, but they'll get exchange of one print or certain number of prints. So that is one aspect of it, print exchange. Other aspect is just exchange between artists, like you mentioned. So
it's barter system.
Yeah. So you send 10 editions and you will get 10 more editions of other artists. So it's purely barter. So you just collect it. It's just for the sake of or the beauty of collecting others' works. So that's limited to that aspect.
Yeah. I just have one more last question. In this age of everything going digital and virtual, and so is printmaking offering something that is very, very hands-on? And is that why many youngsters are attracted to doing prints? I see many of them coming, one-day workshop or even doing projects with him, and they come to me. So is there a kind of coming back of doing things with hand? They come to my paper making studio, they say this was one of the best days. I felt very relaxed and in tune with myself, and all those kinds of words are used. So is it like a counter to the the digital age, or what do you?
I mean, personally, I feel it's not a comeback. We've still not even gone there. People are now picking up here, now understanding what are the possibilities, what can be done. And of course, like young people who are tired of engaging with screens, definitely they sort of like to work with hands. I don't know. I think it's quite a tricky one, because I don't want to be this person who is going to frame someone in a certain way. Maybe I would use I would use this anecdote or a quote from Salman Rushdie. Salman Rushdie, at some point, he says we dwell a landscape, and the landscape dwells within us. Between these two spaces is there the artistic interface, or artistic practice. I think a lot of people have started resonating with that. Like, they want to sort of be in this space and operate with this space. Hence, I see a lot of course, another thing is the ability to procure equipment has gone much significantly higher, and also there are many players in the market who are trying to sort of bring it down into smaller scale, because we were speaking earlier, like I think 20 years back, not long ago, printmaking was an affair like as if you had to go to Tirupati, like a temple, right? You go to this mega temple, and then there will be a god that is one dilapidated etching press, and you go, you worship to him, and then you come back. But now things have changed rapidly because of global markets and access and things like, and that's also a primary factor which is allowing people to sort of go. And yeah, Instagram for sure, social media for sure. It keeps circulating so much. Yeah, that's what I think.
Actually, digital is so fast. It really reached so fast. Even like if you look at today, paparazzi is not there, right? Earlier, how it was. So because even the Google or any photographs, it's so overdone. And in digital, like in 2 seconds, there are apps which will do the merging and do things and give you the print. So there is no process, no more a process. And you doing, me doing, looks the same, because it's the app which is the art, not your print. It is the app which is, the person who has created the app actually is the creator, not you or me. But in printmaking, technically, you are the thing and you go into the basic. So it becomes your work, not the technique.
That's a very good point.
Yeah, so
The process becomes very important.
That's a very good point, actually.
Yeah.
Ayisha, would you like to?
Yeah, I think, I've seen that too with Shrishti students, is that they really want to engage with something that is tactile. And I think there is a fatigue with screens, and it's like a square that you have to keep staring at, and that hand-eye kind of coordination and, that sort of sense of satisfaction that you get from doing something tactile, stitching, for instance. And, I think those things are coming back. I think it will always be there, because we really want to assert our humanness as well, no matter how awe-inspiring these apps are, or how, seductive they are, and how dependent we are on social media and on computers. Despite that, we do want to cook, we want to stitch, we want to do. So I think it is really a struggle between, you know, how we can assert our humanness and continue to expand our dexterity with our hands and our thoughts and the way we observe the world, and how, you know, technology will, you know, and how we treat technology really, whether it becomes an extension of us or we become an extension of it. So those are, but I do see that students, you know, want to feel, there's a lot of anxiety, I think, about the world. And I think there's a lot of anxiety among young people, whether COVID triggered that or whether just the kind of global scenario, you know, the sort of high capitalism. I mean, there's so many things that make young people feel anxious. And I think this is kind of, you know, a way in which you can center yourself and you can ground yourself. And, you know, we know that it can't be a substitute for therapy, or it cannot just become therapy. You know, that's not the reason why we make art or, you know, techniques like printmaking. But I think definitely it is also a valid reason why we should too, you know.
So, yeah, so I have been involved in art education, and some of the workshops where I conducted for students, design students, and some hobby artists and who wanted to learn a new medium basically, and understand the technicalities and so mostly it was basic printmaking what I was teaching or engaging with. So I think the excitement of taking a print, which makes it different for them, because you have that unpredictability and the process of carving and then rolling ink. So there's a nice feeling when you roll the ink and the sound of the ink and all those things which are very physical, which you don't get in other areas of digital screen or whatever. So I think that's what makes them exciting. And another aspect is how it will make some changes in their learnings in their chosen field. How a design student will be benefited by the medium of printmaking, or just a relief print, the black and white of it, or the positive, negative of it, and the composition of it. So these fundamentals of art, or what we call as basic design aspects, which will help them in learning or applying these understandings in their learning. So that's what I think important, and it will some kind of benefits.
So many points are coming here. One is the process. Because of the insistence or the necessity of the process, printmaking slows you down, and in that sense you are more involved and not distracted and so on. And then as you are controlling the process, the outcome is also yours. Like you have a ownership or authorship on the image or other things that come out. And then of course the idea of tactility, that visceral nature of the printmaking, which really holds you in thrall. So with that, I think I'd like to open the forum for any questions from the audience. Almost 6:15. We have about 10 minutes or so. Yeah. She'll give the mic. She'll give the mic.
Okay. I'm Uma, and my question is one to Jayasimha and one to all of you together. So this is about this limited edition thing. So is this concept of limited editions of printing magazine, is it a response to the market dynamics and creation of value in terms of valuation, not value? That's one. Second is when we look at, you know, in the digital world, and what you talked about was in the two-dimensional printing. But is the 3D printing will change the creation of your imagery and dimensions? Will that help, and will it be a progress in a certain direction?
Maybe I'll take the question which was pointed to me, and the rest of the panel might. Yes, it's definitely responding to the market, for sure. But another important factor is we should also remember the first Bible or the first knowledge system printed was only 38 in number. So we started from there, and somehow it's sort of, and because A, it's laborious, and B, if you produce an object in that volume, like I think there are very few people. For example, Krishna Reddy is one of them. Very rare printmakers. Krishna Reddy has the largest edition I have seen. He has 890 or 1,000 odd. Probably people from the museum might tell us. Or Hussein has around 2,000. These are like very exceptional things, but it's definitely to the market value, and it's containing the authorship of the image to a great extent.
No, but also it is, why are you using that print for? For example, if it is a poster, then how many you need? Or it's a portfolio, what you need? It's a personal printing. So the limitation also is about the technique which we are using. So if it is done in a copper or any other metal, how much it can take? And what is the demand? If I take 10 also, mine will not go. So it also is the demand of the artist. That Hussein's was going. So there was a demand. And as much demand, that much the price is reducing. But nowadays, even editions happen in painting and sculptures. It doesn't need to be...
You reduce the supply, so proportionately...
Yeah. No, not always it's necessary that because of that. For Hussein loved editions. He wanted every house to have his work. So what is my interest? That every house should have Hussein, my work, right? So you don't believe in exclusiveness. Some artists will be into, so it's up to...
I mean, also, sorry, just to connect to this, there's one pure printmaking aspect which is going to this thread. Like, for example, Ravi Verma used to produce his editions in thousands, right? Today we call them like fine art, pure prints. But back in the days, they were like proper commercial, prints which were going in. Like, for example, in a rare instances, when you collaborate with other forms, I can see Anuja here, like there was an instant we collaborated like to make some lithographic prints. Now, if you put them in a gallery setting, they're bound in numbers. But suddenly when it goes in Anuja's hands, the volumes are like insane. Like she takes it to everywhere. So that is a tricky discourse to have a look at that.
I just want to add there, in some of the museums in Europe, plates which were done by Picasso, they're steel plated, but you can still buy, it's not a numbered edition, but open edition.
It's a continuous
open edition, so you can still buy etching done by Picasso long ago, but you still get a print from that. So it's not a reproduction, which I think many people do confuse. It's not reproduction of an existing image, but from the original plate, the prints are still being pulled. Any other questions, please? Yeah.
You still need to answer about
the 3D printing.
how is that changing your business?
I'm not an expert in, I think.
Oh, I love 3D printing. I have used it in my work in a different way, but it has really made a lot of things easy. But depends how you want to, again, it's a technique how you want to use it. Initially, like when Photoshop came, we all were like, something. But then, it's like, how do you use that 3D, So once I remember Arpita Singh, so he wanted to know what is Photoshop. Ye Photoshop dikhao. She's an old painter and one of the best painter we have. So I tried showing. Then she says, eraser hai, eraser. I said, acha, to mera painting mitana shuru karo. So ye mitao, wo mitao, ye mitao, and it became blank. I said, fantastic. Mera kaam ekdam blank ho gaya. It came to the first stage. So that's a process which she enjoyed. So it's up to, 3D is also like that.
No, even that AI that people are talking so much about, when photography came, there was this anxiety that it will take over painting.
Yeah.
Because what a painter could do in months, that kind of realistic work, a photography can do in seconds. But now they in similar kind of anxiety now about AI. Whatever artists could conceive and imagine and visualize, AI can do. Artists will overcome that and find their ways around. At the end of it, it's a tool. So somebody has to manage them. So he has a question.
Yeah. I have two questions. One based on what Archana ma'am said, and one what Jayasimha said. So you mentioned that we have this need to. It's almost condescending how we look at printmaking as something that needs to be revived and sustained. So what I feel is that just because of the scale and the speed at which printmaking or printing develops, by the time it comes into the art world, it's already obsolete, and that probably contributes to why we have this urge to hold on to it and revive it or spread its awareness. So I just want to know your thoughts on that. The other question I had was for Jayasimha. You were saying how it's a studio is like a social sculpture. So a lot of things go into creating this social sculpture. There's this awareness of the industry that goes into it, the technology, how the community works and builds this space. And I feel this also contributes to a very particular print aesthetic. So would it be possible to look at printmaking as this aesthetic and this approach to looking at things rather than this particular medium?
By the time he told second, I forgot the first. It's about the revival. Yeah, I agree with you, Mark, that there are a lot of times when the technology becomes old, it comes to the art and we get stills. But sustainability is a completely a different thing to argue. That should be a one full seminar on any kind of sustainability. But the thing is, but even if I look at the technology being so fast, but imagery and content still retains. So that's why I've been arguing from the first thing that even as a printmaking future, you don't see it like a printmaking, just like a tool, like a pencil. Apsara still does HP pencil, 6B, 2B. However the computer has come, that is still valid as a lead pencil. So that kind of an artist practice will not change. So it doesn't matter how you use the new technology also is up to you. But reviving the thought, I'm saying, it's not the practice. We will be using the same practice if I require it. But how do I revive the thought of the people and bring it out of the conservativeness and have a moral stigma around purity? So then don't look at it as a pure medium. Look at it as a medium. That's what I meant. Yeah.
Jayasimha, would you like to answer it?
Well, I mean, I'm just going to quickly rephrase for myself, just to make sure that I understood the question. So you were saying if there is a particular studio which is operating in a certain construct, it sort of ends up producing a certain kind of aesthetic as part of it. And are you asking that is it okay or is it no? Uh-huh. Yeah. Do you think this contributes to the aesthetic of printmaking? Can we look at it as printmaking as an aesthetic way of working, approach that way, rather than a medium? Yeah. So I think it goes in tandem, hand in hand. And today, the need to sort of work with the medium is ever growing, is because of that aesthetic quality to it. Like for example, very few of us, I mean, I'm sure you as a printmaker, very few of us know how an image becomes a printed image. right? So what happens is, if you go to an offset printing, whatever, station, it still is working in a CMYK halftone channel, and when you come back to a fine art edition maker, he or she or they or them, they still revolve around the same CMYK thing. Now the factor here is very interesting. There is a human involved in every aspect of it. Whether you're stripping an image into your dots, if there is a human error, it's an aesthetic. You see what I'm saying? So it's double riding on it. And what you asked was very interesting. And it's actually, on a longer run, it's really interesting to understand, because as in the day the bank of Pinterest grows, this is a very valid sort of discourse and an argument why someone should practice certain things which are going so obsolete, and so on and so forth. Yeah, I agree with you. At the same time, I'm trying to continue your dialogue. Yeah.
We have time for one more question.
Not a question really, but just trying to share my failed attempt at becoming a printmaker. And in this context of what we are discussing about resources and mentorship and educational institution support. So when we were studying foundation at CKP, we were supposed to have a teacher who would come and take printmaking classes in foundation. So foundation, you're supposed to experience all the different departments and techniques so that you get to choose later whatever is of interest for you. And for some reason, this teacher got assigned to some other project, and we never had a single printmaking class. Then we decided to go and look out for our own experience of learning somehow and understanding this medium. And so that we can clarify for ourselves if this is, because I was really keen on taking up printmaking because it seemed very fascinating. Went and spoke to one of the teacher, and even though this department didn't have many students, this person said, oh, why do you want printmaking? You have to grind a lot of stone and you have to work with acids. Do you think it's really a suitable medium for girls? And also, okay, and being the like the naive young students who had not much of a connection and and relations with practicing artists around, we were kind of taken aback. Okay, and then we had to give us a second thought, because one of our priority at that time was to convert this fine art also into some prospective career for us. And they said, what will you do? How will you practice as a printmaker later? Because resources are outside. So he put us a few challenges out. And then third instance is my first meeting with Venu in a very haunted studio in the Academy studios that were set up in Ravindra Kalakshetra. And somebody said, you can just go here and actually try your hand at printmaking. We went into this, the whole thing was like a maze looking for the studio itself, going up the haunted stair. We would never know where we are and who would come from somewhere. It just really creepy staircase that took us there. And then we were sitting there, didn't know what to do, no guidance, nobody at the studio to tell us what these equipments are for, what you need to do. And then Venu happens to just come in there, but to access or do some work of his own work. But then we realized it's more of a studio for artists, not a guided or a space where we can actually learn. And then we realized this reality, and there was just two of us who were trying to explore, and we quickly left that place thinking, okay, printmaking is not for us. So, just trying to say how nobody broke down this entire thing for us. Nobody told us about this medium, but everybody tried to just, the process or the setup that was at that time, just made it seem as a very complicated thing, but it's just glad to see how it's changed today, and a lot of people have opted and spaces have opened up. So which is just an interesting change.
No, I'll tell you, as a woman printmaker, when I came into third year where we took specialization, that's why I said I'm the purest among all, that I've done 7 years of printmaking. So in the first, when we, in the class, all of them said, you big feminist. Uthao litho. Press chalao, dekhte hain. So we also like, we have a feminist, no? So humko aata hai bhai. And we became that, okay? Then after 2 years, this Jaipuri miniature guy came. He said, we have to learn. So we were all excited. He looked at our hats and said, 1 mahina makhan mein rakho haath, phir aiyega. Painting karne ke liye. Hey, this hand is not meant for it. So also there were these challenges. But then, you know.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you all so much for spending your Sunday evenings with us, and thank you all. It is a pleasure listening to you all speak. And if you haven't yet, please check out our latest exhibition, Rhyme Unbroken. And hope to see you soon.
Thank you.